Hey guys, I wanted to go ahead and do a Golf Clash tutorial video here. This is going to be for Tour 11 here. Right now on Tour 11, I've been using, this is my pretty standard bag. I've been still using Claw here. Claw, Hornet, or Thorn really doesn't matter for Tour 11. I really don't take a lot of dunks. So I think you're pretty safe with any of those bottom four here. As soon as that Falcon goes up to a 6, it'll probably be very consistent with this Hornet statistics. Will be relatively similar once that happens. Till that point, I really don't think the ball trail's a deal breaker here. Of course, the extra accuracy boost can be nice, but since I really don't dunk, you really don't need Thorn or Claw here. The biggest thing I don't like about Thorn is how inaccurate it is. It's the only thing I don't like about it. So I barely use that. And I do use it on my guests. It's because I really am limited in my options. I don't have the luxury of either of these, Hornet 8 or even Claw 9 or 10. It's not even close to that. So I think Thorn is a good beginner club to use when you're building up. But once it gets to a certain point, I think that's the weakest of the bottom four there. I think all of these are a better option. But your Falcon, of course, needs to get pretty high up there. So I think once it gets to a 6, then we can start talking about actually using it in my match. So I am going to do some play here. I'm going to keep my bag like this. This is a great setup for Thor 11. I want to concentrate on advanced wind tips for you guys for this round. So first off, let me clear out this chest. Just want to, since the time was getting close to running out, it was another hour or so since I'm going to play some matches. Might as well clear that chest out and then come in here and do some matching. So it's pretty fast to get an opponent. That's nice. It's always nice when it doesn't have to spin that much. Now on this one, especially with the wind in the face, I think a Kingmaker's a great ball. And just to make this a little bit more like, clubs that you guys might have, I'm going to basically, at least for this tee shot, I'll turn it into like an Epoch 5 here. Give it about the exact same spin. What I like to do is I like to aim about here to where here's going to be my landing zone. I'm trying to focus on that and then do it with some curl. Basically, if you go full foam curl and then aim towards the middle of that fairway, it's pretty spot on. And of course, with the the fact that I didn't full max throttle spin it, it's going to stop before it gets to that treble. So that's one of the even better reasons that I do that. Turn it into a Epoch 5. But I did that more for your guys' sake because I wouldn't recommend hitting it any farther than I just did. And with an Epoch 5, you could hit it just as far as I just did. You can get it right to that point. And I really don't think you need to go any farther than that with a Kingmaker on. I'm 20 yards farther than I need to be. I could be 20 yards closer and still have a look at the hole. Now, I don't want you to be intimidated by my Hammerhead 7 either that I'm using, because it's statistically very similar to Sniper. It's just a little bit less ball trail that I don't think you need anyway. So, yeah, this is almost identical club. And like I said, I could be back where that guy is, and he's still going to be okay too. Both of us, even with that wind, and that's basically as bad as a wind you can get with a Kingmaker on. So, just keep that in mind. And you see, this is where max club is here, right here. This is where typical max club is. So one of the things I want to talk about is I like to do this with side spin. And I like to put it just a little bit past the hole like this, and then make my adjustment after that. So I'll go, 11-ish rings here for this 10 wind, because it likes to, accentuate itself when decent. Looks like that little pull there might have cost me, but the way that the wind works is, especially once you go towards max club, is especially when it's dead straight like that, it tends to overplay. So for a 10 wind, I might recommend moving 12 rings, for example. But what you saw me do there with my wind play is I kept it pointed in the direction that it was going. My shot arrow, I put it past the hole at least a ring. At least a ring's worth past the hole to begin with. So that way I could do more of a normal adjustment. Instead I might have just went, instead of 10 rings, maybe I went 11 rings. But I also stuck it behind just an extra ring at least. So all in all, I added 2 or 3 rings there, somewhere in between the two. And you saw it was pretty spot on. Now, my Hammerhead, it also is 100% accuracy, just like Sniper is. It doesn't have the ball guide quite as much. But that's not a hugely important stat, especially for Tour 11. You're playing with a lot of, wind resistance. So whatever you see on your shot trail, for the most part, it's not going to take that shape anyway. So the ball trail is a little overwhelming. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe he missed that. Wow, that's unlucky. Oh man, that was brutal. Did not expect that to happen. All right, so I got a little freebie there, which is unfortunate for this video. And you're seeing me clear out this chest. Oh, and got a cat card. That's one of the reasons that I'm clearing out the chest, is to get card like that. A. And B, I want to get it to where it's 4 golds again. So, I might have to wait like 4 or 5 chests. It's hard to know for sure, but the goal is to re-get that. And fill my whole screen up with gold chests. So I'm going to play some matches until that happens. That last guy got a little unlucky with that putt there. I was expecting that we'd get to a shootout. But if you haven't seen some of my shootout hole guides, I have plenty of Tour 11 content. And I have it with both accounts. I have it with my guest account, and I have it with this account. So I have both accounts pretty well covered for this course. And I'm going to do kind of a similar thing here, where I'm just going to, hit my drive like it would be an Epoch 5 as opposed to Epoch 7. So I'll just take off some topspin, and same thing here on a drive where it's straight into the wind. I highly recommend Kingsmakers. If I was just messing around, I'd use probably a Navigator. This guy used a Navigator. I feel like I could just copy him. We could play, the same together. But especially if you're losing a little bit of distance, I highly recommend, like maybe you don't have a Epoch 5 or you're using Thor or something, I would highly recommend, suggest using the Kingsmaker for you guys. And what I like to do is just a little bit of curl, kind of cut this bunker a little bit, just to kind of keep it out of the rough. And you see how I went kind of max there. Now there's certain winds where you can go for the green here. And I think I found, so this should hold true for an Apocalypse 5, 6, or 7, since they all have the same power number, which means they're going to stay in the air very similar. Similarly, they'll fly just as far, so that's why I'm kind of making that comparison. And one of the things that I just wanted to touch on about that is if I would have got this hole downwind, say it was pointed straight towards the hole. I've kind of figured out on this hole that you can go, I believe, with a Kingsmaker or Titan, it doesn't matter as long as it's a 3 power ball. If the wind's 12, like 12.0, you can do a no power shot and still hit that fairway and skip the fairway, but it's getting right towards the max of that fairway. So as soon as that drive goes to above that, that's when you have to start pulling back the shot arrow some. And that's the point where you don't even have to add any power at all. You'll just hit like a normal shot and 12 miles per hour or pull it down. And here we're kind of mid-club here. Pretty close to mid-club. I'm going to try to find a nice little groove here. And again, you see how I kind of have the shot arrow going a little bit short here. I'm going to keep it a little bit short. I'm going to do, kind of quick adjustment here. It's about 13 rings or so. I'm going to try it with some counter. I was running out of time, hit a great ball. So let's see how this comes in. Just to the left. So one of the things that you'll see me do is I'll do like a counter. Now the numbers that I use for Hornet, when I'm using that, it's a little bit challenging. I think, at max distance it's about 1 per ring. And I think it goes to, I can't really think exactly, but I think it goes like somewhere around 1.7, 1 min club, give or take. So a nice half club or, towards that. But when it's straight downwind, you have to factor that in. So I might take off a couple extra. Like for example, if I was playing that mid club at like 1.3 per ring, well, you'd say, well, I'd probably go 10 rings. But that doesn't factor in the extra shot trail that changes. So you'll see me pull it just a little bit short of the hole. And then that's like taking off an extra ring. And I'm going to do that quite a few times in this round. So I'll be able to show you guys that. And what I like to do on this shootout hole, I don't like to do it how this guy's doing it. Over here to the left, I do like the shot, but I think backspin can kind of be your enemy on this hole a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of the backspin because I feel like sometimes, especially if you don't quite hit the hill and you don't get a quite momentum, that the ball tends to stop coming into the green here. I don't see that being an issue with this guy's. He really got it up there and accentuated it. Got a lot of that slope, but what I'll see, I'll do from time is when I use all that backspin, it makes it harder to get it to, respond the way that I want to. So I like playing it a little bit more aggressive, over short of the hole like this. And of course, it would be great to have that, extra side spin here, but I like to make this about my landing zone. And you see what I'm doing with the shot arrow is I'm pulling it just a little bit farther, and then on top of that, so there's 5 rings. I'm going to go about 8 for this wind. 10.5. Of course, I'm going to go full here with my curl. See, it's coming in pretty good, but see, this is exactly why I told you I don't like to go at it with backspin. You saw it check up there coming into the green, and you're going to see mine. So that's why I typically, the only reason I did the 2 bars there, that's usually the max that I like to do because of that checking up that you just saw my ball do. I didn't expect it. I really feel like I kind of got a bad rap there. That shouldn't have happened, but it did. Because the way that the wind was pointed was more downwind. So when it's downwind, so I'll typically play it like 1 backspin, but since it was downwind, just a touch, I did 2. And for example, if it was straight downwind, I would go full 3. And that's kind of the max that I like to do. And the way that my ball just rolled in there is precisely the reason why I don't like to use a ton of backspin, because you'll see it kind of bounce in inconsistent at times. And you saw that kind of happen there with my shot. Now, my shot wasn't that far off of being quite good. It really only needed to roll out an extra 2 yards there. And it would have took more of the slope, and I would have been inside that guy's ball. So you're talking about a margin of error being very, very tight. A very small, because, you know, if let's say for instance I went 1 less ring there and would have went to 7 rings there for my adjustment, but had I known that the ball was going to respond like that, that's what I would have done. But I didn't expect it to respond like that because it was downwind. So I'm almost trying to anticipate when I'm shooting the way that the ball's going to react, depending on if it's into the wind or downwind. And right there, I just kind of got the unlucky end of the draw there. You know, I was about 2 yards of carry, getting it to take most of that slope and being basically about 2 yards. So a little unfortunate there, but no big deal. Now, for this one, especially on something that's pointed this direction, you know, I'm going to lean more towards, you know, a katana, Kingsmaker, something along those lines. And again, I'm trying to model more of the Apoc 5 spin. Now, how do I play this? I'm going to play this at least around a bullseye over here, and then do it with some curl as well. And this should be relatively spot on, but it should be kind of aggressive too, to where it's, you see it's going down here pretty far. Hopefully it holds up. It did. Now this is one of the trickiest shots for me in terms of the iron that I have. So this is perfect for a Saturn. But if you have, well, you know what, I might be close enough that I got lucky. Well, now I have Hornet, which I would use more backspin than Hornet too. But I shouldn't be in trouble zone with Hornet if I got it to Hornet range. Now it might be wind dependent, but one of the things you want to try to avoid on this hole is Goliath. So in my opinion, it's better to leave it at sniper range, or if you think you can get it up to the short iron range, go to the short iron range. I think the long iron is the trickiest to play, unless you have Saturn on, of course. That's kind of the distance that you want to avoid. And I do believe I did avoid it, but it's going to be close. Nope, did not avoid it. I can get away with it probably. I could probably play Hornet with some power here. And like I said, you know, this is going to be just kind of one of those shots that I can only, you know, hit so well. So since it's right at min club, one of the things you might see me do is I might just intentionally, you know, put it at min club here. Kind of aim a little aggressive. And you see 5 rings should still hit the fairway, and I'm assuming that it's going to be right around 5 rings. And then on top of this, I'm going to go max curl. And there it is. It hit the face. I think it was that shank that made it hit the face. And now I'm in the sand. So this is one of the trickiest clubs to put it in. Because of that backspin. You know, I could have got really precise. With my... you know, I don't like landing it right there and just kind of giving up on the shot. And so that's why you kind of saw me kind of go for it a little bit there. Goliath is the one club, you know, I would have been fine had I not shanked that. It was a little unfortunate. I was kind of, I don't know, I put it in landscape mode and was just slow on my timing there. And it ended up costing me because I ended up pushing it too far left. But you see, when you go down the min club there, that just has a tendency to happen if you're not careful. We both did it. But that's okay. Let's see if I can't kind of give you some guidance to getting out of this trouble. You can do this with either 2 or 4 bars of backspin, either or. Shouldn't really matter. I am going to bring out my wind trick real quick and just kind of size this up to just kind of get an idea. I think it's about, you know, it's going to be under a ring, so it shouldn't be too much of a big deal here. Trying to figure out inside of a ring correction. So maybe about there. Now, you know, the most crucial part of this is going to be perfect ball. You miss perfect ball, you miss the shot. It's basically what it comes down to. And if you don't really know what I did correction-wise there, I set up a wind tutorial video that you can watch where I kind of chop it in half, chop it in half, chop it in half. I think I did that and I got it to 1/8, which basically told me that, you know, it got to the point where I chopped it in half 3 times, and it was kind of where I was going to aim. So with my 90 or 100 accuracy, whatever it is, it basically told me that, you know, it was playing, I don't know, 10, 12 per ring. And since the shot was only called for at, you know, a 7.6 per wind, that it was only like 60% of a ring that I had to go. Like, not very much at all. So you saw me just ever so slightly move it. Of course, if you don't hit perfect ball, that's going to be a moot point because you're just not going to make the shot, especially when you're super careful with your correction. So you'll see time for time, you know, guys, they'll now, this isn't ironclad because there is exceptions, especially when you're talking slopes of the green. Where we were, there wasn't going to be an exception happen. There's almost no way that I could have hit that. So if I was to shank that and make it, you know, it would be a total luck thing. It would have been like how bad that I overcorrected. Like, say I went outside of a ring and then shanked it 1 back. Then it would probably be pretty spot on and have a chance to go in. So just something to consider. So you'll see a lot of guys, you know, they'll use Malibu over Spitfire. I do not recommend that at all. I have never, ever used Malibu in this game. And I've had tons of success in this game. One of the reasons that, you know, the most leading reason that I don't use it is because it takes away that chance. If I hit a drive in the bunker, it basically takes away my chance almost entirely of getting to the green, which to me trumps any excuse for using, like, there's nothing you can say about, you know, the, crap. There's nothing you can say about, you know, that club. So here, let me go about, I'll go about 6 rings for this, give or take. And then I'll do some curl. But like I said, there's no amount of accuracy or, oh boy, it's not coming back quite enough. I think I might just hold on for the win here. There's a little lazy there coming back. I tried to do it with some, side spin to try to get it coming back. And that hole seems to, didn't think that guy was talking, but that's okay, no big deal. I don't usually, always talk to opponents. For whatever reason, some guys tend to take that kind of stuff personal, but I wouldn't if I was you. I just think that, me personally, the emojis, they can be a bit ambiguous. Like, it can have multi-meaning in the way that you use them. So I just like avoiding them altogether. I don't like people construing any ulterior motives that I might have from using them. So I just like not using them at all. It's kind of just my preferred method to play. It'd be one thing if you could actually, talk to your opponent or, type. I think it might be a little bit more easy to kind of convey your message. But if I don't know you, it's like I don't want you to take what I'm saying out of context and vice versa. Like, I'd rather other guys just not use it unless I actually know who you are. Just because I don't want the same thing happen, like I don't want you to do something and, me misinterpret what you're trying to say because you're using an emoji, which, is just kind of hard to convey your message. But anyway, so what I was mentioning about that Spitfire versus, and just for fun here, I think I am going to pull out a globe ball. We're at a 17 wind here. I'm not going to put on very much top spin at all. What I like to do is I like to size it up here, and I try to say, oh, well, this is kind of going towards the hole here. So, and then I'll try to go over here to the side and just try to estimate as to which spot will put me on that plane. So I'm going to aim over here, and I can see that the wind's pointing back that way. And then I'll just try to get it to point me kind of towards that landing zone that I was kind of aiming for. And it looks like I might just be shot just a little bit to the left. I have a feeling this might be heading in the bunker. And sure enough, there it is, bunker. Now I do think I had enough club with the top spin that I used to actually get there. No question that it would have been at least pin high had I been actually able to thread that needle. And you saw what I was doing. I was kind of being real gentle with my curl. I just didn't quite get it on the plane that I needed. I had to kind of guess how much it was going to drift back to the right. I just didn't quite guess enough. But like I was mentioning about that whole Spitfire, see, this guy, he almost ended up in that bunker, right? And let's say he would have been in that bunker. At least 50, 60% of the wins. If he had Malibu, he couldn't get to the green with like 60% of the wins. He would have needed at least the win that you're looking at, and it would have had to been, pointed towards the hole. Any other win. But with Spitfire, you don't even have to try. You can just get it to the green from there. So, in my opinion, that trumps any amount of accuracy you can give me, any amount of ball trail. But then there's, guys that swear by this, and it's just kind of funny to me that, they're comfortable giving up, 30 yards on a sand wedge just for a little bit of accuracy. If I play, my wind right on a Spitfire and hit perfect ball, it's going to go in, regardless if I have the ball trail or not. So just something to think about. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it at max club. I will cut that distance in half, or relatively. I will cut it in half again, which is going to be 2 times in half, and I'm assuming that that's going to put me somewhere in the ballpark of 6 per ring. And I'll just go, 3 rings plus just a little bit of counter Now I did great ball shank it, which is going to push it out to the right. What you're seeing, had I not great ball shanked that, it would have went towards the hole. No real guess about it. It was just using an approximation to basically estimate the wind by cutting it in half several times. And I could see that it was going to be, relatively spot on. The only thing that you have to factor in when you're doing that, you saw me do it with the curl back. I was trying to, since the wind's pushing so hard left, I was trying to basically straighten it out. So if I go that 2-3 rings that I was just telling you, like 2.5, 3 rings to the right, it's not going to be enough because the ball trail is going to change so much that's going to still curl it down that hill. So what you saw me do, even though I was running out of time there, is I countered it back to make sure that it would have been, keeping a straight plane as opposed to getting, so you'll see me do that with my wind play, and I highly recommend it. And let's see how well this guy can pull this shot off. This is not a shot I'm super familiar with, but I do know about it. I think his setup's pretty good. I think it's typically maybe about a 4 backspin, maybe he might have went a little bit less here because of, but it looks like his wind adjustment wasn't quite correct. Now I am more partial to, playing this over here. I think it's an easier shot, but with the new wind setup that I have, I'm going to go at it like this, and I need to go about, with my Poc 7, so the rings are kind of small, I need to go about 10 rings to be on the safe side. And of course, like I mentioned, do it with some curl because you need to counter that wind. And you see me countering it there, and it's just kind of shooting right towards the hole. It's the so what you see me do there is you see me counter the wind. I like to do that. I'm starting to kind of get in the habit to play more like that as opposed to, play more rings. What I've been trying to do is just kind of split the difference a little bit, because I think especially once you get up to these higher winds that it just kind of takes off on you. The wind will just take off on you, either right or left, depending on if it's a side wind like that. So what you're seeing me do is I'm trying to always counter that because it's so hard to estimate how much. And look at this wind. So this is kind of, worst case scenario. The best news about this wind is it's still pointed towards the other side there. Now what I like to do here, I'm not sure if I usually do it with full curl and a hook. Here I'm just going to do it with just a curl shot here. And I know this flips on my screen, so you probably see what I'm doing sideways. Makes it probably a little bit harder to see. It looks like it's not quite enough to get over to that other side, but I got it down here far enough that I should be okay. So that's one of the reasons that I like to get it over there. One of the reasons that I usually, wow, that guy got not nearly as much wind in the face as I did. I'm assuming that he could actually probably get it over there. Now I know that you probably couldn't really see what I was doing because it probably rotated my screen here. So you're going to be a little confused with what I did, but what I was basically doing, I mean, you could see the way that I aimed. I only turned it to actually hit perfect ball. And I didn't hit perfect ball, but I was close. But what it did is it enabled me to go, sideways with my curl and get 100% curl. So I did that. And regardless if I stay on this side of the fairway or the other side of the fairway in the rough, it's not really going to change too much. Like me and him, we're going to be able to get it to almost the same spot anyway. So it's really not a big deal. I like just getting it over here, just, liven it up a little bit. make the game a little bit less monotonous. I get tired of doing the same things over and over and over. So this kind of, alleviates that problem a little bit. So what you're going to see me do here is just kind of max everything out here. And just kind of hit it down towards the middle there. Now, if you couldn't see what I was doing, I was probably aiming maybe 8 rings to the left of where I wanted my intended target to be. So if you wanted to check out where I was aiming, I was kind of trying to anticipate where 11 rings, like 8 rings would be, and put that. Now, one thing I want to add is about 8 rings pointed in the direction of the wind. So you'd have to take, an invisible arc and point it down towards, from the center of my bullseye, and just draw like a line in the same direction, 8 rings going that way. And that was kind of what I was using for my target line. And also keeping in mind that, the side wind was going to add extra curl, which was going to help me keep it out of the bunker. So had the wind be pointed in the other direction, that shot that I was just hitting was going to be far more challenging. So it was actually a pretty decent wind for me. It kept me from having to worry about the bunker whatsoever, which is nice. And as you see, I'm a bit farther than this guy. Now, one thing I want to mention about this hole is I'm usually about mid-club, somewhere around there. This is going to be pushing max club once I actually do my ring correction. So keep that in mind, that I'll probably need to go, a full 10 rings here. And like I mentioned before, I like pointing it just ever so slightly, inside, keeping it inside center here. And I like to go, there's 10 rings right there. So I'm going to go 10 rings, and then I'm going to just do ever so slightly, just a little bit more. And then you saw me do the counter curl back too. And it looks like I'm missing just out to the left there. Might not have needed the curl back. The curl back is more effective when it's on more of a side wind. And mine was almost straight. So you're seeing me just kind of leave mine out. Now his is getting to the point where it's almost starting to be enough to where the curl back starts to actually, be an effective approach. So I highly recommend that. And notice how I didn't put any backspin on mine at all. So what you'll see on some guys for this hole, and I'm sure you've played this plenty of times, and you'll see what they'll do is they'll use backspin. They will use their backspin, like 1 or 2 bars, and you saw straight into the wind. Since it wasn't like downwind, I didn't use any backspin there whatsoever, not even a bar. And it makes it so much easier for you to be able to, it's kind of like that extra shot correction that I'm talking about. It's basically, taking the shot trail, which would have been past the hole, and then when I don't put backspin on it there, it's making it finish at the hole, which you saw. It barely rolled out past the hole there. So what I did was I took off about 1 spin that I would usually use, and that accounted for at least, a bunch of rings of run out. Probably like 4 or 5, I'm thinking. Like it might have made it, 1 bar of backspin probably made it go 4 yards shorter, I'm assuming. I don't know an exact number on that, but the difference between 0 rings and 1 ring there is probably about 4 yards. So, but the one thing that I did do is I kept my target kind of spot on where I wanted it to be. Now it is a little bit of an uphill shot into that green. So one of the things that I do want to mention, especially if you're more towards min club, is I see a lot of guys overcorrect this hole. They'll overcorrect and miss by far more than they had to. because it'll be a side wind and they'll go, say on their sniper. Let me just concentrate on this real quick. I want to mention something. You see how this is kind of straight into the wind? So, some guys, they'll play their sniper like this. What I like to do, especially on like a 12, is I'll do like 4 1/4 bar. And you can see my shot arrows way past the hole. And you see where 5 rings is? It's kind of right on the other edge of that bunker. So I'm just trying to find that 5 ring spot. And then I'm going to go at least another 5 rings on top of that. And then I'm going to counter back just ever so slightly too. Oh, the great ball is going to hurt me. That I know that the great ball will end up hurting me here. So I shot it out to a little bit to the left, and it's because of the great ball. So you saw I used almost spot on 4 bars there. And you saw that was probably, 2 yards past the hole, at least 2 yards past the hole, what I was doing with my aim. Now on side winds, I really wish we were getting some more side winds so I could actually show you this, especially for this guy. So I'm a little worried about his shot because he's aiming his to the right on a right wind. So I'm really worried that he's going to miss this too far right and not win this shootout. And one of the things to keep in mind is you're not at max club. You're more at you're for this shot you are going towards max club, so you probably would want to go like 13 rings here. But it's kind of the only instance where that's the case. Okay, there goes my Wi-Fi again. It picked back up, and you're seeing this guy shooting it out to the right. So that's one of the things that I want to mention to you guys about that, and that's more than anything shot correction. The way that that trail gets corrected for that guy made him miss to the right too much. Plus, he also spun it to the right too, because he thought that it was going to need to come back to the hole. So if there's one way that you can improve your game, that shot that he just did versus the shot that I just did. And look at that, another cataclysm. You guys are good luck for me because I never get these. So that's a good thing. Got 2 cats in this video. I can use those. And we're just going to keep rolling here. I'm hoping to where we could, I would have really liked to have got that hole with a harder wind. I feel like you guys, probably know pretty well how to play that. But you saw that guy make a mistake. And I just kind of want to mention what I mentioned to kind of help you avoid that mistake that he made. So you can just kind of keep that in mind for your shots. Now, if I get this pointed downwind enough, with an Epoch 5, Epoch 6, Epoch 7, you can launch it into that other fairway. You don't have to play this layup shot that this guy's doing. I don't know if he knows that, but he could probably put on a Titan and actually do that. Well, I didn't see what Apocalypse he had, though. That's the only thing. But this shot shouldn't be too hard either. It'll just end up being shorter. It's a lot better if you can get it down there. I think occasionally I'll get it down there to short iron range. So let me see here. That might not quite be pointed straight enough. Yep, probably not. I could put on a better ball there, and I could shoot it down that way. But I do recommend, if you get a wind easy like this, just kind of modeling what that guy just did. And I'm going to do it again with like a Epoch 5 spin, so you can kind of, and what I like to do, especially with mine, so this is a downhill shot, right? So I like to do about 1 ring per, give or take. And then of course I like to also do it with curl as well. Just really accentuate that and get that going to the right quite significantly. And you see it's relatively good doing it that way. And you see the Epoch 5 spin is pretty spot on for that shot. So I'm assuming most of you guys, you probably have an account that is actually coming up to Epoch 5. A lot of guys are getting Apocalypse. I think they're really starting to promote that club. There's probably a lot of guys complaining about how they get beat by, guys hitting it so much longer. So what I think that they started to do is bridge the gap a little bit. So they'll give out a lot of epoch cards. So that's one of the things that I think might be happening. And that's why you're seeing guys with, getting that epoch 5. Of course, I've been playing since April. So I have, my first week was Easter. And I think there was actually an Easter tournament that I just missed. I started that week of that, whatever it was, like an Easter tournament. But I came in that week. So not the week before. I came in that week. So I didn't actually get to play that tournament. And it's funny because they didn't have a tournament after that for like 2-3 months. So I really didn't get into the groove of tournaments for quite some time. Okay, and you see where I am? I'm kind of at max Goliath here, and we finally got a side wind, so I finally get to talk about this a little bit. Now, one of the things, so I'm going to an elevated shot here. Again, now you'll see me, I'll start to the right. You see how I'm starting to the right of the hole before I even start correcting? I'm plus 9 yards. Goliath is about 2 per ring at max. I'm going to go, since it's into max even more, I'm going to go an extra ring. Plus, on top of that, I'm still going to do that shot correction just ever so slightly. That correction that I've been talking to you guys about. And you didn't see me put too much backspin on there. And you see I ever so slightly missed it to the right. So it might have been the fact that I went 6 rings plus shot correction. But I just want you to keep that in mind, especially on side winds. I definitely like to have that right counterspin because I think it makes the shot trail. I think it's smarter than overplaying rings, to be honest with you. I think if you can counter that wind and get it to model more of its continuous, the way that it was originally showing you, I think it's going to be a better shot for you guys than having to, think about. So let's just say, for example, you wanted to do it with side spin to counter it. You would need about 3 bars on that wind to counter that wind. You would need about 3 bars of side spin to counter that. If you don't believe me, try it out. It's relatively spot on. It would be about kind of what I just mentioned there. It would be right about that many bars. And again, I'm going to try to model epoch 5 here. I'm doing my 4 bars of backspin, which is like epoch 5. And I'm going to try to put it pretty high up on the slope, like this. And then I'm going to correct from here. And I'm more towards min club. So here's 5 rings. I'm going to go, let's say 7. Let's say I'm going to go 7 here. And again, shot correction. I want to make sure that I'm accounting for at least that many rings. And let's see if it climbs the hill enough. It doesn't look like it is. It's a little lazy, but still going to shoot down towards the hole. It's just not going to make it down because it didn't quite get up high enough. So you're seeing me at 2.4 as opposed to like 1.4 because it just got just a tiny bit lazy getting down to the hole. And this guy does have a epoch 5. So, he's going to be able to model my shot pretty well here. He can, essentially shot copy me a little bit. The only thing that he doesn't have is his bullseye is different than mine. So I think he has 75 accuracy, I believe, and I'm at 84 accuracy. So more so than anything, he could just use the exact spot. If he was actually watching where I put my shot, he could just put his in relatively the exact same spot. That would be the best way to do it. He got a little bit more aggressive with his line, ended up touching that rough. You got to work. So he got a little unlucky there. And you see I did get the gold chest there. So now I got my home screen full again for you guys. And I'm coming up on an hour here. Now I'm a little disappointed in this video. I really didn't get to talk too much about enough side winds here. But you did get to see it on that last iron shot. So I'm happy about that. But I really wanted to, focus on some, especially the new shootouts. I was hoping we could get one of the Sunshine Glade one, because I know a lot of guys are, that hole's driving a lot of guys mad. So I was really hoping to get to that. But if you can use kind of that same theory that I've been talking about. So let me just discuss that Southern Sunshine Glade hole, for example, that par 3 shootout. What I like to do, if it's downwind and I can get a hammerhead or sniper on it, for example, I'll put it to where it's just rolling on the green, just barely, right? So it's just barely rolling on the green. It's probably, say, like 4 rings of running out towards the hole. So what I'm doing is, I'm factoring in those 4 yards that I was mentioning, that it'll kind of change the trajectory because it's downwind. So the shot will be corrected around 4 yards. So I'll put it to where it's kind of just rolling on the green, where you can see it, and where it just kind of rolls on the green. It's kind of in that zone where it stops like 5 yards short or 4 yards short. Now that doesn't mean that you're on line and you're missing by 4 or 5 yards. So I don't want you to confuse the two, but I just mean that you're like 4 or 5 yards short of the hole. That's kind of where I put it. And then let's just say it was a 9 wind and it's pointing down. So if I put it just rolling on the green, just barely, and of course I'm using backspin to do that. So I'm doing it at max club, like whatever max sniper is. I'm using the most backspin that I can get to put it just on the green. And then let's say it's a 9 wind. If you're using a Kingsmaker or Titan, factor that in, because you're probably at like +9, +10 yards power. So consider that. And say it's a 9 wind, like I was mentioning, I'll go 9 rings. But if it's a Kingsmaker or Titan, for example, on a 9 wind, then I'll go 10 rings on top of that, because I need that extra, 10%, whatever. I like to go an extra 10% on my correction. So keep that in mind. So that's factoring in 2 things. First off, it's accounting for the wind, doing a little bit extra, like going that extra ring, because I'm into a power ball. But then on top of that, it's accounting for the 4 or 5 yards that I was mentioning that you would have came up short, and it'll make it actually come right more in line with the hole. And let's say it wasn't straight downwind, but it's still pointed downwind a little bit. Instead of, I'd use the same kind of theory, but I might not go 4 yards short. Maybe I'll go like 3 yards short. Like I'll pull it just on the green, just a little bit farther, for example, to where it looks like the ball be like 3 yards short. This is the case where I'm talking that it's like pointed downwind, but it's not actually downwind. It would be more of a crosswind, like a cross downwind. So maybe I'll play and I'll do the exact same thing. And I'll always do, that counter curl as well. That's one of the things that I've really started to hone in a little bit, is I'm starting to do that counter curl, because I think it's a little bit more reliable. It's very consistent. And I just wanted to mention that I think it's something worth adopting, checking out. I'm starting to get a lot better, a lot happier with the results of my crosswind play, especially on super high winds. I wouldn't say you need to adopt it on lower tours, but I think for these later tours, 10 and 11 specifically, is using that shot corrector to where you'll curl back to counter the wind and get it more on line how it was intended to be, is a very useful tour. And if you want to do that with side spin, it's also perfectly acceptable. So let me speak about that real quick. So let's say, for example, I did mention this throughout the round, that if you had your sniper on or whatever, and it was a crosswind on like a 10. I said this on the shootout that we had, that Milano hole. Had that been a 10 side wind, you would need at least 3 or 4 bars of side spin to counter that. I would probably, use 3.5 for like a 10 wind, for example, on a straight crosswind, just to kind of, so you can, if you want to not do any curl back at all, and you have the side spin ball on, why don't you just play around with that? Maybe, line your shot up like it would be right on the hole. Say you use on that hole, for example, the Milano hole, and you use, for example, 5 backspin. Maybe you use 5.5 backspin. So line it up with just 5.5 backspin on that hole. Now the only reason I use 4 is because it was straight in the wind. So under normal circumstances, it would be 5.5 bars. If it was downwind, I'd use max. So it's just things to consider when you're playing these shootout holes and you're going for that island. But let's just say, hypothetically, it's a normal wind, say crosswind. And so that means it's not downwind, not whatever. So you're usually doing like your 5.5 bars of backspin. If you want to avoid using curl altogether, you could just counter that with, the 3.5 bars that I was mentioning. Or if it's stronger than 10, use 4 bars. Say you have a Titan on, I think you have up to 4 bars you can use. So let's just say hypothetically you had like a 12 wind. We'll use all 4 of those bars and then use that 5.5 backspin. You shouldn't have to do any curl. Now the shot that you're looking at is going to look jacked. The shot trail itself is going to look crazy because it's going to look like it's landing and then it's side spinning way over. And you're probably thinking the ball's never going to go towards the hole. Well, why don't you test my theory that I'm mentioning to you guys and just do it that way and then see if, perfect ball, you play your rings, play your normal rings. So say it's a crosswind, you're right about mid club. So let's just say, the wind's 10. So if you're at mid club, you only need to go, probably 1 ring less. So you'll probably go 9 rings on a 10 wind because you're at mid club, which is more like 1.15, for example. You don't need to go 1 per ring. You need to go 1.15 per ring. So you'll only go 9 rings as opposed to the usual 10 for max club. So if you were to do that and then counter it with, say, 4, now, and you'll do this according to whatever the wind is. Let's say, for example, you have a 7 wind. Well, maybe on a 7 side wind, maybe go 2.5 bars of side spin. That eliminates your need to use curl at all. You don't need to use counter back if you do it that way. It's essentially the same thing in my opinion, but it lets you actually be a little bit more precise because you don't have to worry about if you're, dragging back extra power, not bringing it back far enough. It lets you be a little bit more precise with your bullseye. So that's something you can also do, which is, I think, is, just as effective as if you were to be adopting, like you saw me in this round do a lot of curl to just kind of counter the side winds. I was pretty much doing it on every shot, and I'm starting to just like the way that the ball's coming in. I don't do it on, let me tell you when I don't do it. I don't do it on like short irons because I'm too close. I don't do it on end-bringer. I'm just too close. I'll do an overcorrection. I prefer that method. So for example, on my end-bringer, which is 100% accuracy, let me show you that real quick. Instead of using the 1 per ring like it's suggested, I've been using like 0.8 per ring. That's pretty spot on. At max club, I'll use like 0.8. And it's actually, relatively spot on. Same with half club. So if half club, is instead of 1 per ring, it would be 2 per ring. Instead of using, 2 per ring, which is obviously not very accurate because of the way that the shot trajectory is being affected by the wind. So, it's curving the ball to the side. Instead of, trying to curl or side spin it back to kind of counter the wind, what I'm doing is I'm just overcorrecting. So, for example, using the ring system, I'll go say, especially on half club, like I was mentioning, like on full club, I'll use 0.8 as my corrector. I'll use 1.6 for my half club, which would be 3.2 if I get it down to a quarter club. And I've been doing that, and I've been having quite a bit of success doing it that way. The hardest thing is once you get into those super high winds like 15, everything, 10, 5, 10, 12, it's pretty spot on. So it's just something to consider. So I don't use the curl method on my short iron or my wedge, but I've been doing it on my long iron and my woods because I find the ball to just be rolling in there a lot more consistent. So I think you should either adopt one of the two methods. I don't care which one you do, whether it's start to try to use the side spin to where you say, oh, it's a 7 wind, I'm going to go 2.5 side spin. Like, for example, to kind of counter that wind. And then just play the shot as is. Like, the best way that I would suggest if you're going to do it that way is to, line it up real quick, how it would be just straight back. Like, say you're using 3-4 backspin, whatever it is. Line it up that way first, and then you're like, oh, well, this is a crosswind, so why don't I add 2 side spin? Or you can just curl it back. And you can kind of use my curl back method that I was using. You saw my shots. They were, for the most part, they were pretty spot on. I didn't make anything. But for Tour 11, they were pretty good for considering that I didn't get it to short iron distance even one time that round. That entire video, I didn't get it to short iron distance even once. So with that being considered, I had some pretty solid shots into the greens because they weren't missing by much. And I just think the way that you bring it in with the curl, it just kind of softens the ball coming in a little bit smoother. So it's a highly recommended method for me. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that in Tour 11. I know it's been a while since I put out some Tour 11 content. Next, I might try to put out a little bit more Tour 10 content for you guys as well, because there seems to be some real challenges with that tour as well. So I might do that so we can talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to put out another hour or two on Tour 10. So look forward for that in the future as well. But anyway, I'm going to end this video for now. Good luck with your Tour 11 and just in general, your wind play. Hopefully you guys can get a little bit more, precise with the way that you're playing those winds. And you can avoid some of those, mistakes on the course and can have good success in your rounds and get all the trophies that you're looking for. So good luck with everything. If you haven't subscribed already, feel free to do so. If you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to add those to the video as well. So good luck all.